change you wanna see. Take care of each other and you best believe we'll change the world, you and me. Be the change you wanna see.
I stop and take a minute to be alone and realize how I feel. Am I living life the way I wanna? Am I taking time for what is real? We talk and talk about what needs to happen. It seems like everybody should improve. If change is like a chemical reaction, I think the activation starts with you. In time everything must change. Nothing ever stays the same. Every day we have to choose what we're gonna do. It's all up to you. Be the change that you wanna see. Take care of each other and you best believe we'll change the world, just you and me. Just be the change that you wanna see. Just be the change that you wanna see. Take care of each other and you best believe we'll change the world, just you and me. Just be the change that you wanna see. To everybody that you talk to, pretending as if you are in the know, when really you're the one who needs to listen, cause preaching is a cover for your soul. The time is now, I sit around just waiting, act as if your brother is in need. If it were you, there'd be no hesitating, so give yourself with generosity. In time everything must change, nothing ever stays the same. Every day we have to choose what we're gonna do. It's all up to you. Be the change that you wanna see. Take care of each other and you best believe we'll change the world, just you and me. Just be the change that you wanna see. Just be the change that you wanna see. Take care of each other and you best believe we'll change the world, just you and me. Just be the change that you wanna see. Stays the same. Every day we have to choose what we're gonna do. It's all up to you. Be the change that you wanna see. Take care of each other and you best believe we'll change the world, just you and me. Just be the change that you wanna see. Be the change that you wanna see. Take care of each other and you best believe we'll change the world, just you and me. Just be the change that you wanna see. Just be the change that you wanna see. Take care of each other and you best believe we'll change the world, you and me. Just be the change that you wanna see. Just be the change that you wanna see. Take care of each other and you best believe we'll change the world, you and me. Just be the change that you wanna see. Just be the change that you wanna see. Just be the change that you wanna see. Every time I feel this way, this old familiar sinking, I will lay my troubles down by the water, where the river will never run dry. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. I'm gonna let myself be lifted by I will lay my troubles down by the water, where the river will never run dry. It's been said, and I do believe as you ask, so shall you receive. So take from me these troubles, bring me sweet release, where the river will never run dry. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. I'm gonna let myself be lifted by I will lay my troubles down by the water, where the river will never run dry. There is a river in this heart of hearts, with the knowingness of my highest good. I am willing, I will do my part, where the river will never run dry. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. I'm gonna let myself be lifted by I will lay my troubles down by the water, where the river will never run dry, where the river will never run dry. This river will never run dry.
Hello, I'm Reverend Louise Green. I welcome you to All Souls Worship, and I invite you to let yourself be lifted today. Our theme this morning revolves around the wisdom of land, gardening, farming, the intersection of food and justice, and the revolution taking place in those realms. We begin with this excerpt from Seven of Pentacles, a poem by Marge Piercy. Under a sky the color of pea soup, she is looking at her work growing away there, actively, thickly, like grapevines or pole beans, as things grow in the real world slowly enough. If you tend them properly, if you mulch, if you water, if you provide birds that eat insects a home and winter food, if the sun shines and you pick off caterpillars, if the praying mantis comes and the ladybugs and the bees, then the plants flourish, but at their own internal clock. In worship, we remember that not all flourishing happens because of our efforts. We call upon a source and a spirit deeply in tune with land and growing and the pace of plants. Welcome to this space of renewal and restoration. Our joint chalice will be lit by Peter Haynes this morning, and you are invited to also light your own candle if you wish at this time.
A chalice lighting by Elizabeth McMaster. We light our flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In the search for truth, may we be just. In the search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace.
Good morning, All Souls, and welcome. My name is Rochelle Rice, and I am the Associate Director of Music and Arts. Today is Black American Music Worship Service, featuring multiple music program ensembles and some of DC's most sought after musicians who have become friends of this community. I invite you now to remain on mute and join in singing our opening hymn, Guide My Feet.
Once again, hello and welcome. Welcome to a community where our search for spirituality and our passion for social action are both central. Where reverence for the earth and belief in the dignity of every person informs our ethics. Where music is an expression of our joy and acts of justice are a symbol of our hope. Welcome to this place where all people of all races, national origins, creeds, gender identities, expressions, sexual orientations, ages, and disabilities, where all people are welcome at this table of love and fellowship. We extend a special greeting to all our visitors and those joining us for the first time. If you'd like to receive our weekly email bulletins, then send a direct message to Gary Penn in the chat. To acknowledge and support Indigenous communities, it is important to recognize the people who lived on the land where our church now stands. The closest village was Nacotchtank, from which the name Anacostia comes. They were part of the Piscataway group of tribes. We acknowledge that indigenous people were here before us, are here with us, and will continue to be with us as we look to the future. So let's take a moment of silence to reflect on whose land we each reside in our many locations around the US and our planet Earth. Thank you for joining in that land acknowledgement. And now we will greet each other in a time of beholding. If you feel so moved, please turn on your camera, put your Zoom on the gallery view, and scroll through the pages of Beautiful Souls. You can wave, you can say hello in the chat, and behold one another as we continue to create online community together.
I love that so much. Good morning, all souls. My name is Kirk Freeman and my pronouns are he, him. I've been attending All Souls for just about 20 years now and have been a member for about 14, but you haven't seen me around much lately because I've been serving as a ministerial intern at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Rockville for this past year and the coming year. It is so good to be home worshiping with you this morning. Even in these hot summer months, there is so much going on in the life of this church. You can always find more information about our offerings on the church website or in the weekly bulletin. This morning, I have one announcement to share, and I'm very excited about it. As you know, All Souls is participating in a congregational worship exchange, and the series Preaching Up the Potomac continues over the next 2 Sundays. So instead of meeting together in this space, we are invited to join our UU siblings at the Cedar Lane and River Road UU congregations in their Zoom sanctuaries. Please note that these services will begin at 11 a.m. And let me repeat that. These services will begin at 11 a.m. You can access them directly from our kin congregations websites, and I'm sure additional information will also be shared in church communications over the coming weeks. Next week, we will be hosted by Cedar Lane and Minister Rev Abi Janamanchi, who will be preaching on being spiritual and religious. In the following weekend, we will visit River Road, and Reverend Nancy McDonald Ladd will preach a sermon entitled For Good. I'm so looking forward to both of these services. Beloveds, as we turn now to a time of congregational care, I invite you to bring the names and situations on your mind and in your hearts into this space in silence. You may also put these in the chat if you would like us to behold them. Today, we are thinking of Marian Duarte, who was in the hospital and is being evaluated for a heart condition. Marian is awaiting further testing and a treatment plan. We send love to her in this time of medical uncertainty, as well as to her spouse, Pablo de Jesus, and their young son, Javier. Our deep condolences to Lauren Howard, whose great aunt Edna died in home hospice in Maryland in June. Lauren was able to spend time with her daily for some months. We send blessings to Lauren and extended family as they mourn the last family member of Edna's generation. Longtime All Souls member Kip Thorison died on June 21st, passing peacefully in his sleep in Coral Gables, Florida. Kip was a big supporter of the All Souls music program, and he loved the arts. He was able to take in a last trip to Key West with his nephews to see a beloved beach before his death. His nephew, Michael Thorison, has been coordinating care, And the family has asked that we name Kip's death and offer prayers in this Sunday service. The family does not plan to have a memorial service beyond their extended family. Finally, our thoughts are with Peter Saylor, who had a heart attack on Thursday night and is in the ICU at Suburban Hospital. We send our prayers to Peter, spouse Laura, and children Fred and Lisa, who are now traveling to see their father. We send love to all as they evaluate next steps. Now, dear ones, will you please join me in prayer or meditation, as is your practice? Let's begin by just taking a moment to take a few relaxed breaths. Spirit of life and love, spirit of compassion and connection. We are so grateful for this time to be together, for this sacred time to share our joys and sorrows with one another. To know that we are held in the warm embrace of this community, even as we hold our joys and sorrows in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. As we behold one another, as we hold one another across the distance of time and space, remind us, as the song does, that there is a river that will never run dry. May it be so this day and every day. Amen. It is so good to be here and to sing that hymn with you. All Souls is a very special place to me. And Reverend Green's call to worship this morning resonated with me so deeply. You see, I was fortunate to land in this community, in this congregation, this fertile soil, when the tiny seed of my spirit had fallen to the dirt, unsure if there was life ahead. It was in this church where I found solid ground and where my spirit was invited to flourish again at the speed of my own internal clock. This congregation is a garden where we can tend to our own spirits, and perhaps more importantly, where we can tend to one another. Over the past year, it's been my privilege to be a part of the team that initiated a pantry for All Souls, the little free pantry located on 15th Street, just behind Pierce Hall. I have loved watching the pantry take on a life of its own as an offshoot, a trimming of this congregation. The pantry, like this church, is a place where people bring and give from their own abundance and can be nourished by the generosity of another. All Souls is a special place, and I want it to continue to tend to the seeds of hope and justice and mutuality and love that this world so desperately needs. That is why my family and I give to All Souls, and that is why I invite you to do so as well. This morning's offering will now be gratefully given and gratefully received. Information on how to give will be shared on the screen and in the chat. Thank you, and blessed be.
In the home stretch of the hard times, we took a hard left, but we're all right. Yeah, life sure can try to put love through it, but we built this right, so nothing's ever gonna move you when the bones are good. The rest don't matter, yeah, the pain could peel, the glass could shatter, let it rain, 'cause you and I remain the same. When there ain't a
Good morning, everyone. My name's Erica Simmons. Gary, am I supposed to start right now? Yes, okay, great. I was asked to share with you all my connection to the land and food justice. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a community that was filled with many immigrants from the Caribbean. I'm the daughter of immigrants born in Barbados and St. Lucia, and I ended up growing up with my mom, my older sister, my grandmother, who immigrated from Barbados before I was born. If you're a regular on this broadcast, you might know her from our Chalice lighting episodes, including the one just last week. We lived in a row home in the heart of East Flatbush and had the luxury of both a backyard and a little front yard. I can remember the experience of my grandmother allowing me to pick and eat cherry tomatoes from her plant that grew in the soil that bordered the grassy backyard on 3 sides. Although my wife will confirm that I usually do not like plain tomatoes, those tomatoes were the first food I can remember eating straight from a garden. Something about that was just magical. My grandmother also frequently shares how she grew up in a home where there was plenty of food grown in the yard and neighbors shared their extra produce with each other. The community had healthy soil, skills to grow, and a cooperative desire to share. I've been to St. Lucia once. My mother, a year before she passed away, took my sister and me to see the island she loved and the place she was born before moving as a child to Barbados. She was proud and fond of St. Lucia, its hilly terrain full of green. She said, "No one goes hungry here. There is food growing all around." Can you imagine? Years before that, I graduated from college. I hadn't yet thought about the connection between food and justice, even after all that fancy Wellesley education. I hadn't yet taken in the significance of the Panther Party's breakfast program. I hadn't yet considered the significance of how liquor, salty chips, and sugary drinks highly outnumbered the few pieces of often not so good looking vegetables and fruit in the corner stores and bodegas of so many of the communities that I lived in and passed through. I hadn't yet considered where the food in the supermarket came from, the distance it traveled, how it was grown, and who profited the most from its production, transport, and sale, the history of the land it was produced on, etc. Shout out, by the way, to Michelle Obama and her new kids show with waffles and mochi, where they talk about these very things. I had considered the lack of knowledge so many kids had about where food came from, how it was grown, and how it tasted when grown in healthy soil and freshly harvested. I knew about the tomatoes in my yard, but I couldn't tell you a thing about so much more, about food in the supermarket and how it did or did not support the health of those living in our community. Following college, I led a group of youth on an urban expedition through an experiential learning program I worked for in Boston. As part of our expedition, we visited one farm for the Food Project in Roxbury, Massachusetts. I was amazed to see this beautiful farm right in the city. The Food Project brought together youth from the urban neighborhoods of Boston and surrounding suburbs to learn about food systems and to do service to help run the farms. This program was getting youth educated and also providing food to the community. By the time we ended that visit to the Food Project farm, I slowly began to recognize truths that were right in front of me for so long. Following my time in Boston, I found myself living in West Oakland in California for 2 years. I learned that West Oakland used to be dotted with jazz and blues clubs, and there was a thriving middle-class African community, many of whom worked as Pullman porters on the trains. I also learned about many harmful changes that came from government programs that led to the substantial loss of employment and much poverty. West Oakland I walked into was one of the poor, historically person of color, low-income neighborhoods on the brink of gentrification, the kind that we are all too familiar with and often taken part in. In that context, Brahma Madi co-founded the People's Grocery, an organization that worked to address lack of access to quality and affordable and healthy food in the community through this purple and orange truck that would station itself in different locations in Oakland. Picture an ice cream truck that sells vegetables. This truck brought locally grown produce into a community that lacked access to a grocery store with healthy and culturally appropriate food. I became both a customer and even organized groups of volunteers for this program. During that time, I became more educated around issues surrounding food justice. In a nutshell, I learned that people's choices around what they were putting in their bodies was highly determined by location, income, and this country's choices that have devalued Black, Latinx, and other people of color, including immigrants. The seeds that were planted in my consciousness at the Food Project in Boston were well watered by my experiences in Oakland. Fast forward to 2009, when I was back home in Brooklyn and had the honor of co-founding an environmental organization, Green City Force. Our objective was to combine environmental service and job training to introduce public housing residents between the ages of 18 to 24 to career opportunities in the green economy. One of our key areas of focus was urban agriculture. With our partners, we broke ground on a half-acre farm at Red Hook Housing, a public housing complex in Brooklyn. I don't know if y'all know, the public housing system in New York City is bigger than most cities in the US. That pilot project, coupled with vision and hard work from many, made way for 5 additional farms and public housing property across New York City. Why does that matter? Let me give you a better picture of what happens with these farms. I'll use some information from Green City Force's site. So cool. How are the farms designed? Green City Force Corps members and public housing staff attend community meetings and gatherings at each development to get residents' input on the farm's plan and design. Residents are surveyed about location, size, and what crops they would like to grow. End quote. Did someone say community organizing and resident input when it comes to food in the community? Quote, how can NYCHA residents get involved? NYCHA is the public housing. There are many ways to help out and enjoy the benefits of the farms. Volunteer to help plant, water, and weed in exchange for fresh produce. Bring compostable food scraps like vegetable peels, coffee grounds, eggshells, etc., to exchange for fresh produce. Attend a cooking demonstration or a community event at your local farm. Does that sound like your typical grocery store? From 2006 to today, here are some of the outcomes of this work. There have been over 23,000 farm stand visits from residents, 121,000 pounds of organic produce distributed, 28,000 pounds of compost collected. And this is my favorite part. 3,797 K through 12 students educated through farm-based learning. This is all well and good in addressing some of the harms caused by unjust policies and actions, the impact of redlining, the mistreatment and devaluing of immigrants and descendants of those enslaved. But these efforts must be combined with so much more. So my history is in NYC, but I've been living in DC for 6 years. I've been privileged to be a part of Green Souls a few years ago when we decided to intentionally focus on food justice in the district. Shout out to Kate, Emily, Janine, and Tiffany, and all the volunteers for the Feast for Food Justice that we hosted. Through Green Souls, I got to know the great work of Dreaming Out Loud and 2 components of the Building Bridges Across the River Partnership, Arc Farm and the 11th Street Bridge Park. So once again, in another city, I see the importance of food, land, and community organizing in strengthening historically excluded communities. And as part of the Beckner Fund Committee, I've been able to distribute these endowed funds to contribute to, among other efforts, organizations pushing for food justice in DC. And I've been lucky enough to watch many of my peers become leaders in food justice movements in the US. Leaders in reclaiming the connection to the land, community by community, restructuring the food economy for the good of the people. I've seen fights for the rights of farm workers across the world and efforts to undo the practices that strip Black farmers from their access to economic opportunity and land. I've seen young people expand their minds to be able to see tilling the land as a source of power and not just a reminder of ancestor enslavement. So a big thing that I've learned about food justice is food justice is racial justice, gender justice, health justice, environmental justice, youth justice, economic justice, housing and land justice. And as with all these justices, I must learn the history in order to understand how things got the way they are. Thank you, West Oakland. And what they used to be. Thank you, Granny and Mommy. And I must reimagine what they could be. Thank you, Green City Force. And work in community. Thank you, All Souls, to recognize the importance of all 8 principles in seeking food justice. So thanks for listening to my story, and I hope you find your connection as well.
Thank you, Erica. I may sound like a broken record, but it is so good to be here with all of you today. This morning's reading is the poem, "The Man Born to Farming" by Wendell Berry. The grower of trees, the gardener, the man born to farming, whose hands reach into the ground and sprout. To him, the soil is a divine drug. He enters into death yearly and comes back rejoicing. He has seen the light lie down in the dung heap and rise again in the corn. His thought passes along the row ends like a mole. What miraculous seed has he swallowed, that the unending sentence of his love flows out of his mouth like a vine clinging in the sunlight, and like water descending in the dark.
I so appreciate Erica agreeing to speak this morning with her voice of experience on these intersectional justice issues. And I'm speaking as I still learn, sharing how we might view our own relationship to land and food and racial justice, and inviting you to take action. Wendell Berry's poem reminded me that I am not at all a woman born to farming. Let me be clear about that. I had to learn my connection to food much later. And yet I'm fascinated by planting and growing in my yard and what it continues to teach me. Berry's words get at the mystery I also sense, the divine drug of soil, as he puts it, the way light lies down and then rises again. I love his images, swallowing miraculous seeds that create the unending sentence of love flowing like vines clinging, bringing the water that goes down into the dark to nourish. This feels like deep wisdom to me, how nature teaches us how to live. I've heard several people speak recently about their work in farming, food sustainability, and justice, and they are lit up in prophetic voice and passionate about the earth. I don't physically do the same work, yet I hear the urgent message. I hear the strong call to a different way of being in relationship with land. one that is based on reciprocity and interdependent care, one that can benefit more people. There's an explosion of groups engaged in what I see as an ongoing spiritual revolution around food, land, and justice. I talked with Sam Wetzel. She's the executive director of Common Good City Farm in LeDroit Park, Ward 2, DC, also one of our Beckner Fund grantees. And I'll use her words to describe their work, an example of what is flourishing in DC and across the country. Common Good City Farm is digging into being a place where people are welcome to engage with land, a kind of proactive engagement. LeDroit Park has transformed from a primarily Black community to one with high-priced row houses, drawing on the influx of gentrifying wet residents, which we see in DC. Public housing remains, with residences right next to the farm site. And so building racial equity and access is the ongoing work in progress in that neighborhood and organization. They're listening to neighbors about what they want to grow and asking who the space is for now. Longtime residents built the gardens. Do they feel welcome these days? Kids are growing up at this farm site, and Common Good teaches about indigenous agriculture, relationship with land, and this particular farm space. They teach about honoring our connection to the environment and being conscious of what kind of food we put in our bodies. The urban farm is a place for knowing nature in the city, a strong part of what it means to be human, as Sam put it. To lose our relationship with land is to lose so much knowledge, culture, history, and power. Common Good is working for more fair and equitable food systems, sustainable agriculture, and greater collaboration with Earth. They see themselves as stewards of the land, not owners, and honor a symbiotic relationship. At the farm, there is a Pay What You Can weekly Wednesday market with diverse vendors and Black farm CSAs, community-supported agriculture in this city. One of those vendors is Dreaming Out Loud, whom Erica mentioned, also a Beckner Fund grantee and based in Anacostia in Ward 7. These are their words, their mission statement that describes the sense of action which animates their work. Dreaming Out Loud is rebuilding urban, community-based food systems through cooperative social enterprise, increasing access to healthy food, improving community health, supporting entrepreneurs and cooperatives from low-income communities, and creating opportunities for at-risk residents to earn sustainable, family-supporting wages and build wealth. We believe that all communities deserve equal access to fresh, healthy food choices, but that achieving this requires moving beyond the access paradigm to focus on community self-determination and food sovereignty. We are working to create an integrated pipeline to jobs, economic opportunity, community wealth building for our most marginalized communities, utilizing the food system as the catalyst. As Erica described so well, food access is related to power and authority, not just proximity to grocery stores or the cost of food. One national leader, Karen Washington in Brooklyn, uses the term food apartheid to best describe the situation of injustice in our disparate systems. Food justice is to be able to afford to buy healthy food, to have a place to get it, and to be involved at all levels of the food systems, to break down the systems of separation. And the Black Farm CSAs and food hubs for Black producers have been at the foundation of this work. Soulfire Farm in New York is another driver of this widespread social justice movement. And one of the founders, Leah Penniman, raises spiritual and political issues about food and land. She wrote a well-known book, Farming While Black. And the description of Soulfire Farm work on their website describes the need and the opportunity for deep change. Soulfire Farm is an Afro-Indigenous centered community farm committed to uprooting racism and seeding sovereignty in the food system. I like that, seeding sovereignty in the food system. We raise and distribute life-giving food as a means to end food apartheid. With deep reverence for the land and the wisdom of our ancestors, we work to reclaim our collective right to belong to the earth and to have agency in the food system. We bring diverse communities together on this healing land to share skills on sustainable agriculture, natural building, spiritual activism, health, and environmental justice. We are training the next generation of activist farmers and strengthening the movements for food sovereignty and community self-determination. Groups like Soulfire Farm, Common Good City Farm, and Dreaming Out Loud are the future of food justice in our country. And the invitation to you is simple. Find out more about this inspirational world in your own neighborhood. Examine your individual and family collective choices about what you eat, what you buy, and what kind of businesses you support. Find ways to amplify this revolution in food production, consumption, and ownership. As social, spiritual justice seekers, we need to know this work and find ways to support it. These are spiritual practices rooted in justice and in harmony with the lands on which we reside. Many indigenous communities have never lost this connection to Earth itself. Other communities are actively rebuilding it in powerful ways. And together, they call us to return to a state of grateful acknowledgement and conscious use. The land itself, what we grow, what we eat, is all part of the love holding us. May we rest in that love by upholding the integrity of creation. Amen.
There is a love holding all we love. love. We rest in this love.
Our benediction is by Percival Chubb from a reading called A Harvest of Gratitude. From the harvest of the soil, we are given occasion to gather a harvest of the heart and mind, a harvest of resolve to be careful stewards of all life's gifts and opportunities, a harvest of reverence for the wondrous power and life at work in things that grow and in the soil, a harvest of gratitude for every good which we enjoy, and of fellowship for all who are sustained by earth's beauty. Go in peace. Return in love. Amen.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Rochelle and the Black American Music Ensemble. And I just want to make sure everyone is very clear that Rochelle wrote that song, wrote the lyrics and music. So let's send a little love, extra love to Rochelle.